Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 7 of Paragon Sound Podcast. I'm your host, John Chapple from the Paragon marketing team, and with me today is Lucy Klinkenberg-Matthews, who is our head of sustainability. Lucy, thank you for joining.
Hi, nice to be here, John. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. I think it's a brilliant opportunity for us, and as we're in this world now where we can't be in person just yet, we want to talk around sustainability, and the world we're in is changing. The recent pandemic has driven us to a lot of innovation and change, especially environmental and socially. So Lucy's here with me today. We're going to talk around some of the key aspects of what sustainability is, how it helps, how PCC are sort of driving that for our clients and who we are as a business. And secondly, we've got a bunch of myths that are quite commonly known across the industry and the planet. And Lucy's here to sort of debunk a few of them and to make you think, did not know that.
I'm going to try, John. I can't promise to have all the answers.
No, it's all good. I'm hoping we can cover a good couple of bits here, so that's great. So just before we kick off, Lucy, do you want to just give everyone a sort of listening and watching, if you're watching this on video, an overview of who you are and what you do within the business?
Yeah, so hi everyone. Thanks for the intro there, John. So I work on part of Paragon Customer Communications Central Governance Risk and Compliance team, and I have responsibility for driving the sustainability ambition and strategy for the business and the programs that sit behind that as well. So most of the work we've been doing over the last couple of years is consolidating the sustainability programs that are going on around our business, and that's culminated in us about to launch our sustainability ambition that will lead us up to 2030 and beyond, to support the commitments of our stakeholders, our clients, the UK government in that drive to a net zero economy and the circular economy.
Wow. So this is a really good opportunity for us to sort of talk about this. Yeah. No, that's brilliant. I think we can just jump in here because I think it's important we sort of look at these pointers here. And, you know, is looking at sustainability something we need to look at or something we really need to look at? You know, what are your opinions on that? And what's the sort of the market looking at around this?
I don't think it's really a case of need or want to look at. I don't think businesses have any options these days. The World Economic Forum's recent report lists the top 5 risks in terms of likelihood are all environmental, and linked to climate change. So this is not something that's an option for businesses anymore. It's the biggest risk and challenge to face the planet, businesses, individuals as well. But also with that it's the biggest opportunity for the globe, for businesses, for individuals as well, to change the way that we do business and drive towards that better future, to be honest. And with that comes massive opportunities. It's been primarily led by the general public over the last couple of years. People are starting to, vote with their wallet and vote with their feet around purchases they make, companies they want to work for as well. And we've seen a massive increase in the importance of all aspects of sustainability over the last few years, particularly in the last year. The social aspect of sustainability that has come with the pandemic has been massively important too. So it's something we have to do. There isn't an option for businesses not to be doing sustainability, but like I said, it's a massive opportunity. This is not something we have to do. This is the biggest opportunity for our business, for all businesses, to move forwards.
Absolutely. I think innovation is key here, isn't it? And I think it's not just addressing your CO2 output and all the great initiatives organizations are looking at. It's all about innovation as well. Like you said, customers and end users are sort of voting with their feet and their wallets, and I think it's important that innovation is there through technology, through customer experience, through innovation and journey. It's important that innovation is there for the technology, so people can sort of do things differently, adapt to different situations. So what have you seen from an innovation point of view, how markets have innovated to this sustainable cause?
Oh, John, you've thrown a curveball at me there.
I threw a curveball.
You might have to cut that bit out. I think innovation, and particularly in the digital space, is going to form a massive part of the drive to the net zero economy, circular economy, and also a lot of the social improvements that are going to come as well. I think we've seen a massive innovation in a few spaces coming through. So one is around carbon emissions. So how we calculate carbon emissions, not just as a business but across life cycles of products and services, and how we feed into developing programs to reduce those carbon emissions. I think innovation's been massively important in the last year in terms of communications, as well. How we communicate with each other has changed dramatically in the last few years. It's been digital technologies that have allowed us to stay connected during this period as well, which has been massively important for people's social well-being and mental health as well, which has become increasingly important in the last year.
I bet it is. I bet. So what does, with all this change and all this innovation, the social change and economic change around this, so what does sustainability really mean, from your perspective?
Yeah,
it's quite a vast terminology as such, but what does it mean to you, and what does it really mean to where you're going with this?
So yes, sustainability is an absolutely vast topic, and you can look at it from a personal perspective, from a global perspective, or a business perspective. But it's really about us all being able to exist on the planet, or as a business, or as an individual in the future. So commonly within the industry, it's talked about in three strands at the moment, of ESG: environmental, social and governance. Now those three strands, they cover massively broad areas for businesses, and of course when you're looking at taking a life cycle approach to sustainability as well, that involves your whole supply chain partners and all stakeholders as well. But it's very important that environmental, social, governance are very closely linked to each other. For example, climate change has social impacts at a very local level as well. It affects people's livelihoods, their abilities to feed their families, can have an impact on migration as well. And when you mix that into a geographic area of the world that has got political instability and a high risk of anti-bribery and corruption, that creates desperate situations for the poorest and the most marginalised people of society. And climate change or any social impact affects these people disproportionately, and leads to an increase in equality across the globe as well. So you may think what you can do individually or even as a business perhaps doesn't have too much impact, but if all businesses and everybody is doing those things, then it can have massive change for the globe, but for those individuals and those communities where we operate as well.
And when you talk about the supply chain, the life cycle of tracking this and the supply chain, I suppose for businesses and organizations, sometimes it's important to see where the end product is coming from, or the starting of the end product, especially if you've got a large supply chain that's maybe global, for example. I think I see what you mean there, where it's an important thing to track, isn't it?
Absolutely, because of course it's really important that we look at our own environmental, our own social and governance programs within our own operations, but in terms of the products and services that we're producing for clients, so be that whether it's our printed communications or what we do in the digital space, most of the sustainability impacts and risks and therefore opportunities are within our supply chain partners. If we look at the carbon footprint of a traditional printed mail communications pack, around about 15% is the Paragon activity. The rest is the production of the paper, the delivery through the postal system, and that supply chain activity as well. And this will be the same for most businesses. Most of the impact and most of the risk, be that whether it's carbon emissions or social inequality or anti-bribery and corruption in their supply chain, modern slavery, is going to be in their supply partners, and sometimes a number of levels down within that supply chain as well. So it's really important that businesses take a life cycle approach to sustainability. It's bigger than just what we do.
Yes, yeah, because there's so many touch points, and if an organization says they are X, but down the line 5 or 6, 10 steps down on the supply chain, it's completely opposite. It's important to have that visual, isn't it? A transparency with supply chain. I take it suppliers have to be as transparent as anything these days as well when it comes to working with big businesses and organizations.
Yeah, absolutely, and there's been a massive push on that in the last few years. And of course, whole technology is building up around being able to track sustainability performance in global supply chains as well, which is massively complicated, of course, but it's important. It's important that we understand how our suppliers are operating, and it's a massive challenge as well for all businesses. And it's virtually impossible to identify all aspects of this across your whole supply chain. But there are technologies out there that can help you do that as well. And of course, we as Paragon, we do that as a business with our supply chain, but being a supplier to our clients as well, we also participate in these schemes to feed into our clients' sustainability programs as well. We're a vital link in that chain.
Yeah, because they need to be transparent to their end user and their end client, don't they, and their end customer, to show that the communications are coming.
It's interesting for us being, a B2B company. Our clients tend to be driven by the general public's perception and requirements around sustainability, and that that translates down or up the supply chain to ourselves as well, and what we need to deliver to help our clients achieve their sustainability goals and aspirations as well, and how we support with that journey.
It's just checking all these boxes and all the steps around this is, it's increasingly important. Now, a big part of this podcast is named around sustainability and myths debunked. And
yes, we haven't even touched on any of those yet.
No, but I think it's important we set the scene around what this is and the importance of it, and how you see it as an individual and us as an organization as well. And I think these myths are quite common, and there are a few things that I've heard over the years of different myths and around sustainability, and you go, is that true? Is that really true? Is there actually an answer to that?
Sometimes,
or people just
sometimes there's not an easy answer as well.
Yeah, and this is where we can pick that up. So I think the first myth, there's two myths that we'd like to talk about. The first myth is all around the effects of digital communication. So assuming if you used printed communications, you would assume that that's heavy on the environment, that's heavy on natural resources, and you think digital is the way forward. Is digital really the sort of the cleanest and the best direction when it comes to sustainability?
Yeah, this is a really massive and complex topic. So the general public generally have the opinion that printed communications are chopping down trees, and why are you using so much paper, and how many trees have you chopped down to send this piece of mail to me, where in reality the paper industry is an extremely sustainable industry. It's very carefully managed. In Europe, they're the biggest industrial user of renewable energy, for example, and have made great strides in reducing the carbon footprint to produce paper over the last 25 years as well. And paper is, of course, a renewable product. And the companies who we buy paper from, we go to great steps to prove the sustainability credentials that they're providing as well. Also, paper, there's talk around recycled paper as well. So a paper can only be recycled a finite number of times, 6 or 7 times. So it will be white paper for a couple of times, and then it will move to newsprint and cardboard, and it eventually ends up as toilet paper. But it can only be recycled a finite number of times, so you always need virgin fibre feeding into that process anyway. I think the paper industry currently measures about 1% of global carbon emissions. Just to put that into a bit of perspective, in pre-COVID times, aviation is around about 2% of global carbon emissions. And the ICT industry, so information communications technology, currently 3 to 6% of global carbon emissions, depending on which papers you read. But that's expected to rise to 14% by 2040. So a massive carbon footprint, also with a massively complex global supply chain, both in producing technology, the devices we all use, the data centers, and also the end of life recycling as well. But that said, digital is obviously a massive force for social good as well. Just in the last year, it's allowed us to connect with our families, with our colleagues. It provides massive education opportunities, across parts of the globe. And also, technology is going to be a massive part of delivering a net zero economy as well. But it's, of course, it's important to remember that moving communications to a digital channel, it does still have a carbon footprint. It isn't removing that carbon footprint, and it can have a reduced carbon footprint. But with all these things, it's not terribly simple. So sending an email without attachments, or doing a simple Google search is round about the same carbon emissions as boiling the kettle for a cup of tea. Now, I certainly do more Google searches than cups of tea a day. I don't know about anybody else, but if you're sending an email that has attachments, has sound, moving images, or a complex call to action where people are going to deliver a website, that has a much higher carbon footprint. And that can be a higher carbon footprint than delivering something through the postal stream as well. So it's also difficult to calculate as well. It's much more difficult to calculate the carbon footprint of digital as well, and that is a challenge for us and our clients as a business. And one we're committed to providing more information around. Moving to digital is a big part of our clients' strategies, and of course ours as well. But we need to be able to provide the information to make informed decisions about the sustainability of communication solutions. So that clients are not just jumping on the bandwagon because digital is seen to be greener. Which can be the case, but it isn't always the case. It's a complex issue.
I bet it is. And that takes us to our earlier points where we're talking around the innovation side of it. Due to sustainability, businesses, organizations, and habits and behaviors are innovating and changing, and a lot of it is going down the digital aspect because of need and must. Like you said, with people staying in touch with families, and education, and recording podcasts like this.
It'd be interesting to calculate the carbon footprint of this podcast, John.
Okay. Hopefully it's not too much. The idea around the innovation side of it, and that's quite important. And you can see that with digital. So obviously people are putting a lot of effort in, but obviously the innovation of communications and stuff like that, people are going down the paper route also. Like you said, like, you know, it's important that paper has a low net carbon sort of score, and, you know, where it's come from is importantly and responsibly sourced. So change is definitely afoot there, and innovation is key. Just not just talking around paper, and we're not just talking around digital. There's also the P word, which is plastic. Plastic has had a very negative report over the years, and rightly so, and how it's in the oceans. You know, I live in Cornwall, and I live right next to the beach, and you see it washed up on a daily basis, and it is quite sad to see. And so plastic has had that negative effect in the media and how people have drifted. Obviously, that's quite a big part for recycling personally. But is all plastics bad? You know, is there instances where plastic is a positive use?
Yeah, again, another really complex issue. I always think plastic is the best and worst invention of kind of the last, you know, the last 50 or so years. Yeah. And really, it's not plastic that is the problem. It's plastic waste and people's behaviour that is the problem. And technically all forms of plastic are recyclable, but whether or not they get recycled depends on you know, the availability of recycling streams in local communities, which, you know, in the UK is relatively well set up, but of course that's not true in other parts of the globe. And also the cost to recycle those products as well. It's not always cost effective to recycle them too. So, you know, of course, plastic can have massive benefits in terms of a packaging material. There's obviously a massive push to reduce plastic packaging in supermarkets, for example. You know, not an industry we're involved with, but a really great example. Packaging prevents around about 20% of food waste. So remove that packaging and we've got an increased food waste of 20%. Now, producing food has at least 10 times the carbon footprint of producing the plastic to package it, and that's before it even ends up in landfill and starts to degrade. So again, another complex issue, but you've got to be really careful about unintended consequences of you know, doing the right thing. That's not going to increase the carbon footprint or you know, food waste or any social problems anywhere else within the life cycle of that product. So yes, of course, there's instances where plastic packaging is just the right thing. Also because it's so lightweight and small. It takes much less lorries to transport it, so can have a lower carbon footprint than perhaps the cardboard alternative. Not always, again, a very, very complicated issue. And of course, in the last year, there has been an increased use of plastic items for hygiene reasons as well. You know, we have seen more plastic items in the last year because they're more hygienic
and more disposable in a sense as well.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think what it's important to do is for businesses to perhaps look at all their single-use items, whether they're plastic or any other materials as well. And what are the alternatives to those items? Can we find more sustainable solutions for those items? Again, looking at the life cycle approach to those items. So do we move to reusable packaging, and you know, how easy is that to do? Can we get the packaging back to where it needs to without massively adding to carbon emissions in the transportation? So you know, it's a really big complex issue, and it's important to act and do something about it, but it's also important not just to jump on the latest bandwagon and give it some consideration. You know, there's a balance to be had there, but it is important that we look at our single-use items and are they the best item for the job. And there's going to be some instances where actually this is unavoidable.
Yeah.
And or the alternatives that are going to have a bigger sustainability footprint. But again, it's important we take those into consideration.
Of course. And I think the recycling around plastic, it takes me back to a podcast I did with one of our dear friends of the business and key customer, Kellogg's. And they were and Neil, who was talking to me about it, was telling me all about the stories that they had, their journey when it comes to sustainability, and the way they look at it from a packaging and point of sale approach. And he was telling me all around the C plastics, the way you can recycle the plastics washed up and then put them back onto the point of sale ends and the marketing ocean plastics. That's it.
Yeah.
And it was amazing how you can then put that forward. And he was also, how businesses, you touched there on the single use approach. Now that he was also talking around, from what I remember, how they build their point of sale promotions at the end of aisles in supermarkets and stuff for any Kellogg's pieces, and how parts of it is kept static, where they recycle different aspects of it that are, that they can reuse. So it seems some of the, some businesses are already sort of looking at that, and I think probably more than we think of, maybe at times. And the innovation, again, back to innovation, is how you look at the end use.
What's important with any product is to design sustainability into that, so both in terms of the raw materials and where they're produced and how they're transported and the production of those, but also what's going to happen to that item at the end of life. Is it going to be easy to recycle in current recycling streams, on whether that's somebody's household or whether that is your supermarket, stores, etc. as well, and how easy is it going to be for the end user to dispose of those? So if we have a complicated point of sale display that is made of different materials and is not easily broken down, then chances are that's going to end up in the landfill skip at the back of the store. So it's really important that sustainability is considered at the design phase of all products and services, and again, it's coming back to that life cycle approach, and looking at the end of life of those items as well. In our traditional print and mail, that's quite easy because paper is widely recyclable. But as the business has moved into a lot of different areas, that's provided us a lot of challenges of what sustainability looks like in across all of our products and services. So be that whether it's point of sale or the digital space as well, we have a lot of challenges going forward on how we will deliver sustainable products and services.
Well, I think that signs us off quite nicely on this episode, Lucy. I think we're hoping to bring you back in, and we're going to do some more episodes with you and some more content assets.
Lots more to talk about, John.
We've got lots to talk about from our sustainability and ESG campaigns. So first of all, thank you so much for joining me on this. And
pleasure.
I hope people listening and watching took something from this. I think it's very informative, and it's a topic that we all need to look at, and I know it's close to everyone's hearts as well. So thank you very much for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time on the next episode. Thanks.
Thanks everyone. Bye bye.